You're with Newsmakers on the panel, Andrew Holden, Alec, Neill and Jim Tully. We'll have a look at a couple of media matters that have drawn plenty of fire this week. First up, the tragic death of the Georgian luger just hours before the opening of the Winter Olympics, and both One News and 3 News chose to play the grisly footage of the luger losing control, losing his life as he catapulted into that steel pole. Was this gratuitous to screen, Jim?
I wouldn't have shown it at 6. I might have shown it later. I think the audience at 6 is such that it would be of concern as parents seeing teenagers and young children watching that kind of image. I think they could have cut it at the point that he was tossed and we didn't need to see him hit the steel girder. Later on there's a different kind of audience, and I think in that context it might have been okay, but certainly not at 6 for me.
Right, so later on are you saying a more adult, non-child audience is more accepting and wanting?
Yeah, the theory of the watershed, that from about 8:30 on, mind you, of course, it's not exactly like that, and the watershed is a bit of a joke, I think, in reality. But I think at 10 o'clock or so, and it's usually later than 10, there's an audience that's sufficiently mature that they should generally be able to handle that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting that it does appear most broadcast news networks around the world did show this footage. The similar debate blew up in the States, you know, when NBC and ABC showed it as well. Would have you, if you were a television editor, Andrew?
You know what I think of television editors, mate, and their ethical standards. I think I agree with Jim. It's the timing of it. It's not that television doesn't show death. They'll show the Twin Towers, they'll show bomb explosions, and you have a reasonable expectation that somebody's, well, in fact, you know that somebody's been killed. I think this one is, it's a very personal death. You're seeing a person, you know, crashing into a pylon in that moment, and you could have stopped it and thrown some stills afterwards. So I think they probably erred, but it's pretty, you know, compelling footage, and it's hard to make that call, I think.
Did you see it last Sunday?
Yes, I saw it on Television 1. It represents approximately just less than a second in the clip itself. There are far worse images from the bombings in the Middle East, where they have close-ups of blood and arms missing and things like that. Motor racing and some of the action that you see in that when the crashes occur and the close-ups that you get to that. To be honest, one would have not known whether he survived or died in watching the clip itself. I watched it later in the evening and was more ready for it at that stage. And again, I wasn't absolutely moved by it, that I was horrified. It was just one of those things that happen. It's a fact of life.
It was actually the sound that I found the most horrific at the point of contact. And I don't consider myself to be a shrinking violet, but I actually felt quite revolted after enduring it at 6. Anyway, Ellie Moore's personal life. It's interesting that the Herald chose to lead the charge on speculation that she shacked up with a woman, and then the women's mags got in on the act, prompting Ellie to lash out live on Breakfast TV. And of course TV1's Breakfast show, if I can be so outspoken, is a bit of a junkie when it comes to celebrity gossip and who's canoodling with who. What on earth do we make of all of this? Is it fair game, Jim, or invasive?
Well, I don't think you can have it both ways. So you have a system where television people, court personality, in fact their networks actively engage in promoting them and arranging deals with magazines and so forth for coverage. So if you're actively seeking it, when do you turn off the tap? And I think that was the Naomi Campbell debate in the British courts over, you know, on one hand you're seeking publicity, but then if you don't like the kind of publicity, then you suddenly want to stop it. I think the action of the paparazzi kind of guy, I think, was unacceptable. I don't like the idea of TV1 using Breakfast as an avenue for, you know, her to put her side of the story. But that story was around for some time, and I think I knew 2 weeks beforehand that the magazine was going to run it, so it was out there.
They were hunting, yeah. What about the Herald? I mean, it's interesting, I don't think the press have really touched this, have they?
Haven't touched it at all, and to be honest, I've followed very little of it. Personally, I couldn't care less. The Herald's an interesting one, but then there's a little bit of a difference between the normal Herald and the Herald on Sunday, which is the more hysterical, gossipy sort of a title. So you'd expect them to go for it. Yeah. I agree with Jim. I mean, the grubby element too of it was a little bit of TVNZ trying to defend its own and giving her an opportunity to fight back. And I think, you know, really that's not the right choice for them.
Including the publication of certain editors' email addresses on the telly as well. Interesting, yeah. The fact that the likes of Ellie Moore have happily paraded their babies in front of the women's max, just coming back to your point, Jim, in the past, does that change the rules of engagement as such, do you think, Alec?
I'm not sure about changing the rules of engagement. First of all, like Andrew, who actually gives a toss if she wants to live with a woman? I couldn't care less. Secondly, they love the celebrity status and go out of their way to enjoy that status. Why people that read news become celebrities, I have no idea, because to be honest, they're some of the most boring people that I've ever met. And thirdly, when you get somebody called Hosking going on television in support of her, well, if ever there's a poser, and then he complains that they want to photograph his children. Well, God almighty, could the man get a hairdo to start with?
He's a good Christchurch boy, Alec.
Oh, gee.
We will take a break. Coming up, Facebook and Burnside High, and also rugby. Is it back on the radar? Do stay with us.